All right, well,
It's April.
it's 6 o'clock, so I'm gonna call this meeting of Codes and Zoning Subcommittee to order. We'll run down the roll real quick, Leslie.
Everybody's here but Tommy.
Okay, that's the roll. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
I read it when it was an email.
I'll take a motion on this. Motion to approve, Noller seconds. All right, so
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. So first item for discussion tonight, we've got Rick Gregory here. I feel very fortunate that we were able to get this squared away and get things going. Mayor, have you already had him sign his agreement? Are we good to go on that? or-
Actually, I have signed the agreement, and here's the folder for him to sign. Then we will have the agreement signed.
All right.
Yeah, bonus points for penmanship.
People sign things when you can't read them.
Well, we got you on the hook now.
Cops used to do that. I say, if you, 20 years from now, you have to appear in court, how can you say that's your signature?
All right, so on this unifying the zoning and codes, have you given any more thought to how we ought to proceed with that?
Yeah.
Everyone seems to like that I've talked to, likes the idea that you and I had discussed of just having, one document, and then select your differences for C1 in the urban versus C1 in the county. C1 in the urban, you can live on your property and have commercial business. You can't do that in the county. So making that your C1, then your C2, and then that difference between C2 in the city, C2 in the county, making that a C3. And that way we can just kind of scoot everything to where it needs to be, but you still have one set of Hartsville-Trousdale ordinances. Is that?
Can I offer an alternative to that?
I'm open to hear anything.
What makes sense to me is to try to hold on to as much of the old as you can as far as how it's represented on the maps.
Well, you are still aware that those maps have not been straightened out.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. But what I was hinting at or headed toward is right now there are different zoning classifications for the county and the city, the old zoning classifications, and they overlap. And without getting into the nuts and bolts of what they say once you get into them, if, for instance, the county zoning now says R1, if there's a designation with that R1, whether it's a prefix or a suffix, like CR1 for county,
Okay.
and HR1 for
the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just, leave that part intact so that you've got a starting point that you can go back to and know when they changed and be able to
For just continuity going
separate the
forward.
two. Yeah.
Okay.
So that you're not doing a wholesale change from the bottom up. I mean, it's easy to put a document together that just does wholesale changes. You start from the ground up and don't particularly pay any attention to what happened before.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense that's what you want to do. If you want to hold on to it and have a way to transfer today backwards.
Yeah.
And see what it was before, that makes sense to me, and that's where I'm leaning, is to put it together so that you've got a way to, cross that bridge and go back to it
Because
if you never needed to.
we are finding ourselves, especially when we're looking at zonings on the map, when we're doing these rezonings, just distinguishing what the current zoning is, we have to go back through those. So I see, 20 years down the road, after we've done this, I think that would actually, Rosalie, what do you think about that? Because you're having to search back through this. That way you still have
On
the
a daily
distinction.
basis.
You still have that distinguishing between city and county, with the H and the C there. Hey there.
I think that would be very beneficial.
Instead of
H and
completely
C.
changing the notations there.
I like that, C and
And then you could even have
C
a
and
table
H, I like that.
with like setbacks.
And this is why I wanted to hire Mr. Gregory. In doing that, we also want to kind of, as we're going through this, look for the holes of what we don't have, especially with commercial. As far as things, we've gotten a process now. I don't know if I sent that to you or not, but our, a little zoning chart. I'll get that to you. We came up, GNRC helped us come up with a chart where it shows all, the majority of everything listed for residential and shows what can go in those zones.
Oh, like a matrix.
Yeah.
It's a land use chart.
Those are handy.
And
It was broken out individually by zone.
Yep.
It's tough. You have to fumble through it, and if you've got one reference to go to that lays it all out, it makes it a lot easier.
And in that ordinance, we also put in designation of a process of if something is not listed here as far as a use, what's the process of getting, determining where that use goes. So it's not just left up to whatever a person decides they want to put it in. That being said, I guess when we do this, we're gonna have to amend that ordinance also so that that chart reflects our new designations of H and C.
Right. And what I would do, I think it makes sense, is as I'm going through and looking at the different zones, for instance, whatever zone happens to be considered, is to take those uses that are listed in that zone and just populate the matrix with those different uses. And for the most part, like in the Hartsville's C1 district, for instance, administrative services are called out, community assembly. Those are usually use categories. And then you've got separate uses like laundromats and dry cleaners that are broken out as separate uses. And that gets awful cumbersome when you start trying to track all that down. It's easier if you do a use category in the matrix like administrative services and then plug laundromats and dry cleaners into whatever that happens to be most closely related to, probably like convenience commercial with barbershops and drugstores and things like that. They're quick stop, run in, drop off. You're not standing around shopping all day. It's a convenience commercial. And if we can do that and drop them into different categories, you reduce the number of places in the matrix that you have to fumble through, and you can just refer back to the category itself, the breakout, to find those individual uses. And you'll see all of that, but it's just a way to collectively.
That's part of the cleaning up that I'm wanting to do.
Absolutely.
So that it makes it easier for residents to be able to go and look quickly and be able to see one document on the website, and here's all your information. People don't realize how messy this is until they actually try to use it. And I'm noticing the ones who didn't quite understand why we were doing this are the ones who's never looked into it and tried to find something.
It takes a little bit of doing sometimes.
It does. Were there any other suggestions that you had as far as this process?
Well, none that we have to solve tonight,
Okay.
but you can tell how dog-eared the thing is, and that's not an up-to-date copy. That's only good through whatever my last October of 2020, looks like the last time I was
Okay. Now,
involved.
the one that I gave you is up to date as of, that been last year when we got our stacks? No, that would have been current, because Amy printed that off current.
Okay.
So now that, granted, this year we've got some more ordinances that have been coming out of planning that have gotten approved, that table being one, fees for rezonings, that fee table, that was another one. So there are some more up-to-dates. Rosalie,
Amendments and everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you get those.
Okay, I didn't discount that, but this has got all of my notes and tabs in it,
Exactly.
so I went there first. In the county, things like where it references the size of a drawing, now it's 1 to 200, 1 inch equals 200 feet. That needs to be 1 to 100. Just little things like that that make it easier to use. Somewhere, and need to add outdoor firearms training facility. I think that was in there, but it's not in my copy. It may be in the later copy.
it should be in the newer one, yeah.
Reference city codes and fire department requirements in the county section, in the county ordinance, so that needs to be reconciled. I don't know where this falls, 5042DF4, 17,000 square feet's an odd size, appears to be a misprint, things like that. I don't know where 17,000 square feet came from. I think it's a lot size. Include telephone switching facilities, separate floodplain regulations into an appendix. That's something that I've done with Cheatham County. They had the flood regulations as a chapter in the document, and it's a lot easier to put it as a separate appendix, whichever appendix it needs to be in. There may be others, but that one, like the use matrix, will be an appendix.
Yeah.
And that just makes it easier for when the updates come through. You just have to replace that part of the document. You don't have to go through and
change
renumber
everything.
everything and mess with that.
Okay.
There was a section, I've got a note, delete time for notice. I'm not sure where that is, delete time for approval. And another at the end of section 8 to reference statutory requirements. That's in the county. And in the city, something about buffer strips, mobile home park building permit, action, and BZA. That's something that the city does. I guess the county does too. And David's got a long history with that. I don't know why. The Board of Appeals sees it after the Planning Commission considers it. And that's backwards from what I'm accustomed to. And I don't know where that started.
I think now they see it before we do, because they have a meeting before us now.
The board does?
Yeah.
Okay, that may be.
I believe that's,
Because they
you
do
know,
their.
here
variances.
lately, they have not followed us unless it's something that comes up in our
Okay.
meeting that makes it keep back to them.
Okay, well, like a special exception, there's really nothing for the planning commission to look at if they're going to the board to get that special exception use approved.
Yeah.
There's nothing there for the planning commission to look at beforehand, so good.
So we'll just need to get the wording changed if it's not already been updated.
Right. I don't know, extend portion of zoned lot. I'll have to reference that. I don't know what that's talking about. These are my notes. I'm just thinking out loud. In the special exception part in the Hartsville ordinance, there are lots of exceptions to the special exceptions. So those need to be thought through and figure out if we want to carve out exceptions to the list of special exceptions.
And that'll be something we'll need to do both here and in planning before it goes before the full commission for them to make a decision.
Yeah, everything we do goes to plan.
Yeah.
Junk and scrap yards, I think, need to be in the special exception portion. This is in Hartsville. Religious facilities, they're in there now as a special exception. That's dangerous.
I'm about to say, because we can't really do that as a county, can we?
They're protected. I mean, they fall under Religious Freedoms Act, and that's where Murfreesboro got in trouble with theirs. They didn't do anything wrong. They had a site plan that the county looked at. And if you know where the property is, there are 3 corners of the intersection the mosque was located on that are in the city of Murfreesboro. The one corner they were on happened to be in the county and not annexed. And they brought through a site plan. All they were asking for was approval for a building permit. And the neighbors took them to court because they didn't advertise the agenda, I think is what it turned on. And they got tied up with the chancellor there that was trying to please the crowd, and it went sideways. But when it got up to appeal, they tossed it out because you don't have to publish your agenda. At that time, you don't. I don't think you still do. Again, floodplain regulations as an appendix. I don't know that note. And it's, somewhere in there, it refers up to the County Board of Zoning Appeals in some document. And that may be where I got this. I've got a note for Hartsville BZA.
Yeah, because those are the same entities now.
Yeah.
If they were ever, I don't know if they were ever, were they separate?
You know, I don't know.
They-
It
In
might
the
have
notes that I have read in the office,
that's just
yes, they were
Mr.
separate,
Kerr
and then when we became Metro, they combined.
He's the old man.
And then in section 7, at the tail end of the BZA part, we box ourselves in because language here is not consistent with the statute. We say you have to consider and decide all variance applications within 30 days. You have to consider and decide special exceptions within 60 days, and 30 days to consider something else. I would recommend taking that language out and leaving it whatever the statute calls for. You don't need to get ahead of what the statute requires. So if there's ever a application or submittal that comes to you that needs more study or you need more time on, the statute doesn't call for a time limit. It does on the subdivision.
Yeah.
If you turn in a plat, there's 60 days to review it or it's deemed approved. But things like special exceptions and variances, there's no clock ticking when they get here. If they haven't produced enough information for the body to make a decision, you can always defer and take time to review what they bring back. But with this language in there, you're boxed in.
Yeah.
And somebody could take us to court and beat us over the head with it. So those kind of things just need to be mocked up and taken care of, I think.
Sounds great. So those are the things that we've been talked about in planning for years. Of some of that I didn't even know was an issue. Didn't even know it was in there. So yeah, that's. And does anyone else have any questions for Rick?
No, not at this point.
So you're gonna work on stuff and then bring it back to us next month and we'll go over it and discuss it, and that's the plan?
Let me offer a different,
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
fantastic, a different approach. I'm doing similar work for Ashland City and for Marshall County. And we had a meeting a couple of months ago in Marshall County, and a big group was in there. And when you get a big group together going at it, I've got a dozen different opinions of what needs to be done and how important it is. And we really didn't have a game plan. So my proposal here to you is let me go through and give you a starting place, give you a template, and present that back to you and then respond to that. And, I'm not making wholesale changes. I'm just trying to clean out the chaff and put the matrix together and do things like consolidating it with, reconciling it with statutes, that kind of stuff. And I'm not here to run up the tab. I'm trying to save you some money actually, and do that and bring you back a product and respond to that instead of starting out of the gate with everybody's opinion being rolled in on what we need to do, and I'm confused when I leave.
I think it's great.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Could I also pose a suggestion as you're going through, and as I'm working in the office, I see opportunities where there needs to be more clarification, maybe more information, new ICC codes that have come forward, like concerning swimming pools, things of that nature that aren't in our code that needs to be kind of amended.
Things like ICC and building code references, I would walk lightly on them, putting them in the zoning ordinance. Building permit originates with a site plan for commercial and industrial and multifamily. And that belongs in here, and if it's in there by reference, that's fine. It just needs to be where it can have an effect on what you're trying to accomplish and the building codes and fire safety and all that goes along with it. There's nothing wrong at all with it being in here by reference, but I wouldn't cloud up the ordinance with it being a part of it,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Is that from just the evolving of building codes over time?
Yeah. It's like floodplain. We don't have any control over that. They just send us a new document and say, here, if you want to be in the program, adopt this.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I say put it in an appendix, and when it comes in with new language.
You just change the appendix.
Yeah.
So we could do the same thing with both the building code and with the maintenance code that we have.
Right. And if there's a section of the ordinance that they're in now, maybe they can be housed in a part of the ordinance that is more aimed at that kind of regulation, like where the Board of Zoning Appeals information is tied down. Maybe there's a place there. I'll look for the information that I have and see if there's something in there that jumps out at me. But yeah, I mean, good information, but I wouldn't bog down this document more than you have to, because that's sort of a standalone issue.
Sure.
It travels through cities at least, I assume counties, and since we're metro, we're more county than city.
Yeah.
Charter is more county than city, so everything comes out favoring the county, and the city just piggybacks on that. And the building code portions that I'm familiar with are more attuned to a separate section of the municipal code, for instance. And if there's something that works that way for what we're trying to accomplish here, I'm happy to help with it.
So maybe changing the language in the zoning instead of stating, so like on the swimming pools, instead of stating the building code or the ISPC code, actually just put it as a reference to the appendix.
Just a paragraph somewhere saying, for further information on swimming pool regulations, see X.
Yeah.
And quote the ordinance or resolution number or whatever.
Okay.
Wherever it's housed, just give some direction on where to find it.
And that way, down the road, when that changes, then you don't have, like you said, you don't have to change the ordinance, you just change the appendix that it references.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's a much cleaner way of doing it.
The lighter you can keep this, the more focused it is on building and zoning, the better off. It can get bogged down real quick. I don't have it with me. I put together a list of county seats not long ago, and for whatever conversation, the length of the zoning ordinance that those county seats have for around, I was doing it for Ashland City for around the population of 5,000, and some of the West Tennessee county seats have 200-page zoning ordinance. And I'm thinking, what in the world have they got going on in Huntington that they need 200 pages to address, and other places, like this one's 106, 107, there's a lot of, documents about that size, but I'm thinking, what in the world are they doing that requires that kind of detail? And then some, I can't find at all, like Irwin, where Irwin is, way up in East Tennessee, I can't find their zoning ordinance. I mean, I've looked everywhere, and I don't know why they're doing it that way. I want somebody to be able to find it so they know what they're talking about when they get here.
Yeah.
And it saves them from making a trip or a phone call and tying up somebody here to track down what they're trying to do. If it's out there, I mean, if it's adopted, it's a public record anyway. So put it up so they can find it and they don't have to bother other people with it.
Yeah.
But just something that I was trying to do as a conversation starter. And it just amazed me that so many cities have to have that kind of detail, and some others you can't find them. So I don't know what size they are.
Yeah.
I assume they have one, but I couldn't find it.
Well, I mean, the conversations that I've had with several people, you have that conversation of we don't need more big government. And I get that, and I agree with that. At the same time, we do need enough government that as we're growing and more people from outside the community are moving in, we have ways of managing their behavior as far as the zoning. And that way we're not taken advantage of as a community because, well, you don't have anything on your books governing this, so I can do whatever I want.
I was at a well-attended meeting in Ashland City last night where a gentleman is operating a quarry on a piece of residential property in town. And
good.
the neighbors were upset,
You think?
rightly so,
Yeah.
that the government wasn't doing what they were there to do. So,
Yeah.
you know, it all sounds good until it's next door to you.
And honestly, by cleaning all this up, I just want it more transparent for the citizens. As you buy a property in Trousdale County, here's the zonings that are around you, here's what can come in beside you. And if you don't want that, then you need to buy land in a different area of the county.
Or buy the land around.
Or buy all the land around you, however that works.
And the property is right there on Highway 12 going into town, and it's right beside the gentleman that had been city judge for 20 years. He was on the planning commission for 20 before that. He'd served the city for all these years, and his daughter stood up and said, we didn't buy the property when it was available, when it came up for sale, because we thought it would always be a residential lot. It would always be built on as a residential lot. And I'm thinking, man, bad move. Bad move. You can't know that. If it's there and you can afford it, the only way you can control it is on it. That's right.
All right, well, I look forward to working through this. I would ask that, you know, any language that you run across that needs to be changed, do us a favor and let us come to us in small chunks, because any of that, we're gonna have to get approved for the full commission after it goes through planning.
All right.
And small chunks makes it a lot easier to be explained.
We'll do it
Then
in
if we
bite-sized
do-
pieces.
Yeah, if I bring a whole elephant in front of them, it's gonna be difficult to get some of them to understand what we're actually doing. And
Well, actually, we did it that way in Cheatham County, and it went through fairly smooth.
okay,
Take it as a whole.
that way it can't be nitpicked over. Is that the thought process?
It went pretty smoothly. It took us 3 years to get there.
Yeah.
But after the product was finished, it went through pretty smoothly, so.
Well, and I guess at that point, it is all in the presentation of how easy it is to read through and look at a glance. And so,
And if you're not making any changes to things like lot sizes and densities and setbacks and those kinds of things, if all we're doing is consolidating.
Yep.
That's an easy explanation.
well, like the 17,000 or 17,000.
I'll have to dig into that. That may need to change. I mean, if it's worked all these years, that's fine. It's just an odd number.
Yeah,
Don't know where it came from.
and honestly, I really wouldn't even know where to begin to look for that one.
Oh, I got it. I just, when I was riding through, I blurted it out. I didn't give you any more detail. Go ahead. I'll dig that one out.
Okay. So yeah, Rosalie, now that you're kind of running herd over the office, any documents that you see that, you know, you think that he might need, you have his email, his information for contact and whatnot? If
I
not,
will get it. for
please
sure.
get that.
Mhm.
Because I think that'll make the process so much easier. And hopefully we can slowly start getting this department kind of cleaned up. And because if you don't have clear documentation, it makes it really hard to answer questions. Not to mention the time it takes on you to have to go dig up all the answers. So I'm hoping in doing this, it is a benefit all the way across the county, not just to our contractors who are using it, but to all of us also having to reference it, and to be able to see where the shortcomings are so that we can address those before they become an issue for the whole county. We are working on, in planning right now, we're still working on updating the commercial building regulations. We've got some of those that are gonna be coming before the full commission already in your packet tonight. So we've got one on the tree preservation and maintenance. And what we're doing is we're actually adding a section, section 4.141. And so what the way we're doing that is we're gonna do 4.140 is going to be the new section. And then in that, that's gonna be for all these commercial ordinances to fall under. And so underneath that, the first one is gonna be the tree preservation, and the next one will be the ADA accessible parking lots. On the ADA accessible parking lots, that one's pretty straightforward. All it is putting into our ordinance what federal law already states. And it just makes it easier for everyone to reference and say, okay, we're compliant. And of course, that's on all new parking lots. That is not, anything existing is always grandfathered in. So that one's really a straightforward one. The tree preservation, on the other hand, there's been a lot of, let's say, either half-heard information or false information coming out of planning on people watching the videos. This is only for commercial and industrial. This is not agricultural saying you can't cut your tree down, or residential saying you can't cut a tree down. So this is only for commercial and industrial. And the intent is to try to keep commercial from coming in and just randomly clear cutting fields. Still giving a nice country feel to town. So it's preserving the 24-inch or greater trees, which we're calling heritage trees, because, I mean, just to replace a tree of that size is almost impossible. It is broken down between trees of 4 inches to 7 inch, 8 to 23, and then 24. It does give the ability to use existing vegetation for part of their buffering area. It does give them the use to be able to take existing trees and groups of trees to count towards a percentage of their buffering area, as long as it all stays contiguous, so that there's no gaps in that buffering strip. But there's nothing in here that I see, and in the discussions coming out of planning, even talking with Matthew Carmen at our last meeting, I wanted to give him an opportunity to have some discussion on this. Yeah, he's about to cut down a bunch of trees on his property before this goes into effect, but he understood the purpose of it and why we were trying to do it on commercial and industrial. It helps with erosion, it helps with some of the rain runoff. And these are just, I mean, especially like I said, the 24-inch trees are just trees that you just can't replace. Now, no one is saying that you've got a diseased tree that's going to be threatening the building you're about to build, and you can't cut it down. There is provisions in that, but you can't just randomly say this tree's in my way. Oh, look, there's a dead limb on it. Okay, it's a diseased tree and it's coming down. There is a process that contractors are going to have to do to be able to go through, and that way we understand everyone's being honest and forthright in what they're saying. They go have an arborist come in, look at the tree. Okay, yep, that's a diseased tree, cut it down. And most of your tree services already have that. So if you're going to cut the tree down, you've already have access to the arborist anyway. So it shouldn't be an overburden on the commercial or industrial. Any questions on either one of these? These will be going before the full commission. I just wanted to make y'all aware before it got there, so.
It was pretty concise.
I think we worked really hard on the wording. We've been taking these one at a time. At the same time, we've been doing steps each month to get them to a final process. I'm hoping that our next meeting in April, I'll actually finally be able to have the commercial building exterior regulations that we've been talking about. I'll actually be able to have an ordinance or something close to an ordinance to be able to bring in so that we can look at it before it goes to full commission while we're still debating and discussing things in planning. If there's any input that y'all can add to it. Right now we're at, what we've come up with is a 60-40 on road fronting sides of the building. So your 60% is going to be preferred material. Your 40% of that surface will be your, how do we say that, David? Was it limited?
Yes.
I believe that was the wording we used on that. And then we've got some materials that are prohibited. Bare block, exposed plywood, aluminum or steel. You can't have that on the building. But any side that is not road fronting can be any of the limited or preferred material. So when we go down McMurray, looking at what we've put together so far, I think there's only maybe 2, maybe 3 buildings of the, as you go from city limit to city limit that aren't already in compliance. Everything between the red lights is already in compliance with what we've put in as far as preferred and the percentages. And so I'm really excited. We've been working really hard and taking a lot of thought into that to come up with something that would keep us from having a bunch of pole barns put up as businesses. Keep some materials that are a little more higher maintenance so that over time they get more dilapidated faster than, say, a brick or a stone building. I'm still on the prohibited material. I'm still a little iffy on that because I know from state law, any material that is approved for exterior use, we can't really prohibit it. We can say we don't like it, we can ask you not to do it, but we really can't prohibit it. So we're hoping by doing this, the 60/40, we're not really prohibiting anything. And Gallatin actually has a 70/30 in theirs, on their regulations of their buildings, so that you're not prohibiting it, we're just controlling how much of an undesired material you can have on the building. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rick?
I haven't heard too much squawking about the front of the building, on the front facade, as long as they can do a different material coverage on the other side. If they're not visible from the street or, right against a neighbor that has traffic on it. If it's just a secluded neighbor, for lack of a better term, I haven't heard any squawking on that. We had dollar store, Monty Turner did a dollar store one time. He's done dollar stores all over the mid-state. He did the one in Cascadian Springs. And we asked him to put, I guess, all brick on the front, and he was okay with that. He put just regular concrete block on the sides and painted it. So he was okay with having to do the front and better materials.
What we got off on is all the dollar stores around us are all brick on the front.
Yeah.
And they built this right out here. And
Did Monty do that one?
yeah, they didn't put all brick. They just put. That's what.
And
He knows he can. He just chose not to.
In their documentation, they said that they're screening for the dumpster, that the brick would match the brick on the building. And so when it came through planning, I went, great, so it's gonna be just like all the other ones, and their brick's gonna match, and they're gonna do a brick one. Not only did they do very limited brick on the building, they went and put up a wood surround around the dumpsters, like, no. I mean, they tried to, it's not there, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you came in, this is your site plan, you proposed it, so we made them tear the wood down and put the block around, because at least we could do that. But yeah, that's why we're doing this, is because we're running into these issues. As out of town people are coming in, well, if you don't tell me I have to do it, I'm not gonna spend $1 for it, regardless of how better it makes my building, how well it fits into the surroundings, they don't care.
The Marriott on top of the hill there in Goodlettsville came in with a brick facade all the way around, and they changed architects, and the one in Texas didn't get the memo, I guess, so they came back with ethos. That's what they were starting. They didn't have a brick ledge on the bottom. They didn't have anything around the building to support a brick facade. But when they started putting up the ethos, we said,
You know, what's ephes?
It's stucco, false stucco, engineered something, ethos.
Okay.
That's what we classified as limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
engineered integrated fiber system or something like that. It's false stucco, but they got caught and we said, no, you said brick, put up brick. So they cried and put up the faux brick, like brick veneer. They did manage to hang that, but yeah, it happens everywhere. It's not just here.
Well, and then we got into discussion on the difference between hardy board and cementous board.
Same.
It's not. I went down to what is it, Source One on 109. They're one of the largest materials distributor in Middle Tennessee, well, and in this part of Middle Tennessee, and was talking with them. The cementous board, they said they don't even carry anymore. It was a fiber board with a cement sealant over top of it.
Oh,
So if it got wet from underneath, it literally would just crumble. It would
like
just
an old masonite.
Yeah. And then your Hardy board, Hardy is a brand,
Right.
but it also references a specific design of concrete board. And there are other companies that they even supply with, but it is a concrete fibered board. So it's concrete all the way through.
That's what I thought all of them were.
And so looking at Portland's is where we got a lot of that from. It kept having them kind of grouped together in one and prohibited in another. And so I wanted to go and get some information on that. And I actually have got some pictures for next planning to kind of show what that cemented is, because that's what we used when I got to looking at it and talking with them. That is the board we used there at Cumberland. And so I can show you how it started to already break down with the pictures and why it's not as good as the Hardy board. So that'll be information we can pass along there. And then is there anything else that anyone has been looking at or brought up to them that we need to discuss tonight? These were the main points of what I wanted to have discussed during the meeting.
That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
The text talks about 15,000 and 7,500, but it gets down to the table and it's got 17,000. I think it's just a typo. But
So are you thinking that should be 15,000
Yeah,
instead of
it should
17?
it should be. But there's no saving language in here. I expected to find something that said, in case of conflict, the more restrictive shall apply, which is pretty common.
It is there.
It kind of hints at it, but it talks about,
When you have to go back to the charter, when we took them in,
okay.
and I'll get Amy to send you a copy of that section.
It talks about more restrictive standards than required under other statute, and then it refers back to statute, but it doesn't say anything about this document in the document.
Okay, I know the way it's read in the charter, when the section where they took the two together,
Yeah,
it states as they are,
exactly.
the more restrictive of the two will be
And
the,
that may cover this,
okay.
but it needs to be in there. And I think it's in the Hartsville ordinance, but I'm not reading it that way in this one.
And I haven't looked at this particular one recently enough to have it fresh in my mind, whether that 17 is also in the county and in the city.
No, it's just a count.
Just the county.
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, that just needs to be I think it's cleaned up.
I think it's a typo.
And honestly, because we have that in place, that it, the charter already says the more restrictive is the one you go with. If as we're cleaning like that one, the Hartsville one says 15, we do 15 for that one, is that actually changing anything? Because what's already law says the more restrictive is the law.
Right, and if you read it, this is a number of dwelling units with public water and sanitary sewer with public water, but without public wastewater.
So why would you have a bigger dwelling?
They're kind of backwards,
Which county is this, please?
R1.
In the county?
Yeah, because that doesn't make any sense. Why would you have a larger dwelling if you don't have sewer?
Right. So those kinds of things tend to show up when you're
Yeah, when you're actually going
budgeting
through each
together.
one.
But I do think we need to be very transparent when we
Yeah.
do take this, like anything that we're changing, even if it's just a typo, we need to be very transparent that we're changing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you'll get a red line copy.
Okay, perfect. I'm not saying you're not gonna show,
No,
tell
no,
us
no,
when
no,
we present.
This isn't a
when
Rick
it's
deal.
sitting
This-
on.
This is a county city deal. I will give you and what I will probably do, since everything is supposed to, hinge on the county, I will probably use the county ordinance as the base document and drop in the things from the city that belong there because they're different.
Yeah.
And fill in the blanks as they're needed, like convents and monasteries, that's a city deal.
Yeah. Cause we have a lot of those around here.
Yeah.
But you never know
You
what's
never
gonna
know
happen next
when you
week.
will.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a question. How often are you seeing it where they have to change the facade every so many linear feet? And
You're talking about breaking up the facade? Lots of places. Yeah, that's common.
And
It
we,
depends on how long the wall is, and that's where the distinction is made in even places like Franklin. I sat in on a session with them probably 30 years ago, and they talked about verging the block. And what verging block is, I didn't either. That's where they put the line, the cosmetic line through the block when they're putting the wall up so that you don't see that on the outside. They didn't want you to be able to see that. They wanted that block wall to be verged, so it's all one uniform
okay,
face. That was a long time ago, but back to yours,
so instead of taking
200,
that,
if the wall is 200 feet, you can say break it. If it's 50 feet, you can say break it. And you can even say how far that break needs to be. But that's more like meddling than governing at that point, if you know that,
and
if you know that
we
comment.
really, that actually came up in both this month's meeting and last month's meeting in discussing this. We really tried to avoid that. We gave a list of architectural features that they could put, but nothing saying you had to do one or the other. It's, here's these features that are preferred. And so that, and our reasoning for that is, so you have someone like a Taco Bell who has a predetermined design of their building. We're not telling them you can't have your recognizable building. We're just telling you, we'd like that recognizable building to have these materials versus these materials.
I mean, one of my first projects that I had at the firm over in Lebanon was Jones Brummett Elementary.
Mhm.
And they made them break that facade so much there that it drove the cost of that building up by about 36%.
Yeah,
Just on the amount of breakup on that facade. And so what did that do? Once the budget was approved for it, they had to go through and slash things that they really shouldn't have slashed. So now what we're having to do is go back in and add those things back in as they've collected more tax revenue since that building has been opened. And it's really hard to retrofit when it would have been nice to have those, those conduits in place with, with a blank foursquare, over. Now it's, okay, now how do you get a conduit through the concrete? Because they couldn't do it because they had to spend so much money breaking up that facade. And that's just one of many of those projects over there that it's just like scratching my head, this is a mindless waste of money.
and they didn't have the forethought to put like a pipe in the place that they could cap.
It costs so much to run. We're talking about not a little bit of conduit for data. I'm talking about a lot of conduit, 4-inch.
Yeah.
Running it all over the place that they just had to slash. And that was just a part of what they had to slash.
Yeah.
They have to come back and add it. And it's the same thing I'm seeing in other counties that what my projects are. It's just, I think it's a bit heavy-handed. I mean, I can understand to a moderate amount, but I mean, they're out there with tape measures measuring, making sure that breakup happened exactly at this foot marker.
Yeah.
Hendersonville has a bad reputation for
Oh, yeah.
details. They called one place a beige castle instead of white castle, down to the minute details, and Lebanon is about in a ditch that way now.
That's.
I looked through their South Hartman corridor regulations and was just, no, that's just, that's just crazy.
In Sumner County, that thing isn't linear, because you go to Hendersonville and it's absolutely asinine, but over at Liberty Creek, it all looks like the same big prison. You know, that new school over there looks like a big prison. It's a great facility. I mean, I worked on that thing for 10 months, but still, you know, they didn't make them do anything there. It's a big brick prison.
The lot size in the county in R1 is 15,000 if you believe the text, and I'm told that the text usually controls whether it says so somewhere else anyway, and 12,000 in the city in R1. So there's a difference. I think probably the easiest way to do that is to have two matrices and do one for the county residual, and one for the city. So you can just flip back and forth and know what the setbacks are, size of the lots and all. Make life a little bit easier that way.
And it gives homeowners that are looking, who bought property and looking to build it gives them a quick place to go to, so they don't have to flip through 6 pages to get the information ferreted out.
What can I do on my property? I get that all the time.
Yeah.
And you gotta flip through and find the zone and determine what they can do and what they can't do. It's a lot easier if you just got one place to go to.
Rick,
Yes, sir.
let me ask you a question. Not that we'll ever have it here, but I've seen it on TV. Tree houses. We have anything that, I mean, I've seen people spend $100,000 building a tree house in their backyard, you know. And they're more like a house than just what you're thinking of, little thing for the kids. It's where they can,
I was gonna
they live in
say,
it.
if you want me to try to develop some language to put in here about residential structures, Ashland City, there was a realtor that owned a lot there behind the courthouse that wanted to put 3 Airbnbs on her lot with her house. It's not zoned for it. The Airbnb is a house, it's a residence, just like our main house is.
Yeah.
And we don't break them out by the size of the structure. You know, if it's 700 square foot Airbnb, it's still a house, it's still a residence. So if you want to put some language in here to try to cover tree houses and oddball sizes like tiny homes and things like that.
Absolutely.
House is a house, you know, no matter the size or location.
Don't want to get caught with it.
Yeah.
Drawers,
Yeah.
Especially on the tiny homes, man.
When Mayor Chambers brought it before commission, because there was an individual who wanted to do a tiny home community on his property.
Yeah.
And he wanted us to come up with some sort of language to propose to make zoning change for that. What came out of planning was, no, a tiny home is still a home.
That's right.
So we already have structure, regulations. There's no
Code
reason
requirements. Yeah.
to change it. So it's treated like a single wide trailer at that point.
Yeah.
Because a tiny home, majority of those can be moved. So they're not on permanent foundations, and
I
so
think
we
it's
didn't treat it
okay.
any different.
I don't see how tiny homes are gonna be more than a fed, because you don't have any place for your stuff.
They're ridiculous.
Everybody's gotta have stuff.
We've got
Yeah, I
enough
thought I
storage
moved into
facilities that are
one
popped
myself.
up to take
Jesus.
care of your
Most
stuff.
of
That's right. That's right. You gotta have enough, you gotta have 2 or 3 others.
Most places build them for homeless people.
Yeah.
Place for them to live till they get better off.
How many $300,000 RVs have you seen going down the road that's got a little trailer behind it to drag their stuff with them?
Yeah.
Or a motorcycle that's, going cross country, and they got a trailer behind them,
Yeah.
hauling their stuff.
Everybody got stuff.
Gotta have stuff.
I know that when we get into churches building the tiny homes and doing that, I know the lawsuit that was brought up in Davidson County
Yeah.
has already set precedent on that as long as it's on church property and the church is the one doing it, there's really not much we can say about it.
It gets tough,
I
especially if it's for a church use.
I don't know if y'all know what I'm referencing. The church there on, was it Wood?
Franklin Road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was right there. Was it Woodlawn or no?
It was near MBA.
Yeah.
Can't think of the name of the lawsuit,
But the church had quite a bit of property with the church, and they decided to put in 10 or 15 tiny homes for homeless people to come and have an address so that they could get on their feet. Can't apply for a job without an address. Neighbors came in, said it's a zoning violation. County came in, said you can't do it. So the church sued the county. It got all the way up to Tennessee appeals, and they lost. The county lost. Because in their statement, I believe it was a Methodist church, their statement was to help, the poor. And that's exactly what they were doing, and you cannot stop them from conducting the mission of their church. And so,
That's a blurry line there, what's a mission and what's not.
Exactly.
Unless you read the law.
Yeah.
And the law is broad.
very broad.
The burden is on the city or county to prove that it is not. It's not
That's
for
right.
them to prove that it is.
It's blurry.
And so when anything that comes before
Yeah.
planning, and whether it's a utility or whether it's a religious organization, a lot of times, and people in Charleston County are not gonna like this, but there's a lot of times, those issues, the commission, their hands are tied. Planning, their hands are tied. There is nothing we can do about it. You can't stop it. All you can do at best is regulate the appearance of it.
And not give anybody good ideas,
Exactly.
good, bad ideas.
Yeah,
Group homes, there's a bunch of them.
we actually have one here in the old Cunningham house.
If you've got
HBs.
R1, you gotta treat it as R1.
So, and there are some of those things that we don't have in our regulations that we will have to fix as we're doing this and get that put through, things that have been neglected for years, just so that we have something in place. I know I've talked with several on planning, I know I've talked with several of y'all here. We just don't want to get in a situation where every time something comes up, we have to react to it. Because when it goes to court, you look like an idiot. You can't just make laws because you didn't like it.
Right.
And so we need to have things in place before they come. So then we have a way of managing what comes. It's not a point of trying to tell someone what they can and can't do. It's a matter of just, here's where you can do that, here's where you can't. As a community, we've decided that business is better served in this area versus another.
Be certain, be sure when you're hearing something, I would say do it all the time, but especially on something that can be controversial, that you build a record there at the planning commission when you have a motion made. Don't just let it die with, I don't like this, I'll make a motion to deny, and that's it. And it gets voted on, turn it. Put reasons in there when you make a motion to support your decision. Yeah, so the judge has something to look at when it gets there, because they don't want to do this. They don't want to be in the zoning business.
Yeah.
They want to support what you do, but build them a record as you're discussing it and base the motion on what was said in the meeting, and leave yourself some room for the judge to decide with the county or with the city.
Mayor, do you have anything that you're wanting to
I'm good.
discuss tonight?
I'm good. Nope, I'm good.
All right. Rosalie, thank you for all you're doing and will be asked to do in the next couple of months until your department gets straightened out. You were doing most of it already anyway, so at this point, at least it's old hat for you.
Not something that I'm not used to, correct?
Yeah.
So, but it's moving right along.
Okay.
There's processes in place. We've got where inspections can still be done utilizing Macon County inspectors and inspectors for the state. Just to let everybody know, we do have the signs put together. They're now the correct size, and we found headers that'll go with that. And so I've got the order put together and should be ordered tomorrow, so we'll have the signs ready and already have a tracking system and inventory system set up.
Okay.
To be able to take care of all of that.
I was really hoping that 2-month window that I put on the amendment would be plenty of time. It looks like that's gonna work out great. Hopefully that they'll be in within a month as far as getting the signs in from the manufacturer.
That's what it's saying on there, that it should be here.
4 to 6 weeks.
No,
Oh.
sooner than that, so
Great.
that'll be nice.
Okay.
That way we can go ahead and label everything and so have tracking numbers and stuff, so it's gonna do well.
Glad to hear it. If nothing else, I'd entertain a motion. All right, all in favor? Motion's adjourned.
Rick, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.